السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، I begin my khutbah today in the praise of the Almighty, in the praise of our Creator, our Sustainer, the one who inspires faith in our hearts, the one who showers His blessings upon us day in and day out, the one who has made this dunya a place of test and trial for us, the one who Himself is just and calls to justice, the one who will cause each and every one of us to die and hold us to account for our deeds in this world. We begin in His praise and His praise alone, the King of all kings and the Master of the Day of Judgment, Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then we send the best of prayers, the best of supplications, and the best of blessings on the best of creation, on the best of examples, on the best of men, on the best of teachers, on the one who is worthy to be followed, on the one who erased the disobedience of Allah Ta'ala from this earth, on the Prophet of mercy, An-Nabiyyu Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I remind all of my brothers and sisters that are here today that do not leave this place of test and trial except in a state of submission to Allah Ta'ala, a state of taqwa and God consciousness. After having said that, my brothers and sisters, I want to reflect on where we are in the month of October in the year 2024. And I want to begin by saying that, in my mind, and probably in the mind of many, it is unfathomable. That means it is almost unimaginable that we could be witnessing some of the greatest atrocities this world has ever seen. Some of the most tragic, most significant, most barbaric, most brutal atrocities this world has ever seen. Now, I want to be clear about this point because I hear constantly a certain narrative. And before I talk about this issue, I want to be clear that it's not a war that's going on. There is a genocide that is going on, right? There is not a cycle of violence that's going on. There are perpetrators. There are people that, like what used to be said by some of our leaders of our own country, there are people that are using naked aggression, they're utilizing terrorism, and they're using weapons of mass destruction against an innocent population and community. We find literally there are some of the statistics that are coming out that over 200,000, they keep saying 40, that number hasn't changed in how many months, over 200,000 people, 2/3 of which are women and children, have lost their lives because of this genocide that is occurring today. And before, again, I'm reminding each and every one of you, right? If this conversation or this narrative goes on anywhere in your social circles, in the people that you're around, where you are, you call it for what it is, right? I'm saying that very clearly, that it would be a falsehood to say that this is a cycle of violence or this is a war. No, you have to call it for what it is. And this is clearly a genocide. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out is that, this issue that's been going on, forget about just the loss of life, which is obviously, I just told you the numbers there. Put to the side the complete and utter destruction of residential places, of hospitals, of schools. If you look at some of these pictures, this doesn't even seem like it's real. And honestly, it's hard for me, and I would say the vast majority, is to even look at some of the images that we see on social media because we think it's not possible for a human being to do this to another human being. And what's very ironic or sad is that the people who supposedly were seeking a safe haven from genocide of the past have become the perpetrators in this particular situation. The people who were supposedly saying, and it was said never again, right? In the past, they have become those people who are the perpetrators, who are the ones that are causing this destruction and harm, and it's done in such an open and overt way. There has never been an episode in the history of the world where we can literally see this destruction and this killing happening almost as if it's live. Has it ever happened ever in the history of man? But you can see that happening today. So it is incumbent upon the A'immah, right? The Imams, the scholars, the general community, the people at large, that everybody should be talking about this issue, number one. And so it's, of course, my obligation to speak about it. One of the things that came about, and I'll just tell you one story about a 12-year-old girl, and this is one of the great issues that probably I'll focus on in my khutbah today. She said, she's in the land from the land of Palestine, and what happened was her and her family, they were able to evade the bombing and the shelling, and they relocated from one location to a second location. That happened again, and they were able to evade a second time the bombing, the indiscriminate shooting, all of that goes on to punish the whole community. They were able to avoid it again. The third time, she lost consciousness, right? Something happened. And when she woke up, right, she found that both of her two parents and her 4 siblings, brothers and sisters, they were all shaheed. They were all martyred in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Her parents, mother and father, and 4 siblings. Now, I want to ask, who amongst us in this masjid, right, or in this area we live, has ever gone through, experienced, or had to endure anything remotely like that? This is a 12-year-old child, brothers and sisters. What is her future going to be like when she wakes up and the people who used to spend time with her, who used to nurture her, who used to advise her, who used to eat with her, who used to just simply live with her, they're all gone. They're all gone. You know what this young girl said? She said that I wish I could just be with them. Meaning, I wish I could leave this world. When you have a 12-year-old child, brothers and sisters, who is longing and wishing for death because her family has already left, imagine her state. That reminds me of a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're thinking about hadith of Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, rahmatullahi alayhima. It's in both of their books, their compendiums, on the authority of Abi Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala an. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, La taqumu as-sa'a. He said that the day of judgment, the last hour, it will not come. Illa an yamurra ar-rajul. Except that there will be a man, a person, he will pass. Yamur, what? Biqabr al-rajul. And he will pass by the grave of another person, and he will say, Ya laytani makan. He will say that I wish I was in that state. I wish I had that dead man's position. Now that hadith that I'm telling you, right, of Abu Hurairah, it reminded me of what this girl actually said. This girl, she saw her dead family, and it's not an issue of iman here. It's an issue of she's gone through so much affliction, so much pain, so much trauma that she just wishes that she was in a better place. It's that simple. And this situation today, what we're seeing happening in Gaza, is a reminder to each and every one of us how dire and how terrible and how atrocious the situation is, because the Prophet ﷺ was talking about the hour will not come, meaning the situation will become so bad that there will be people who will say that I would rather leave this dunya than to stay on it. And you have this happening today. You have this literally happening today. And one of the other great points of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and also what this young girl said, it shows us that there is a sense, there is a lack of hope in ever attaining freedom from this situation. A lack of hope in ever that justice could be served. So it's really worth for us to contemplate about. Which brings me to my second point. During the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, this issue of this young girl, she's wishing that she was with her family. She wishes she could be in a better place. She wishes to be in a place where, this is to her a tremendous injustice that's occurred. And she wants to be free from it. So I'm going to tell you, during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, in the seerah of the Nabi ﷺ, there's a very interesting incident that took place. And this incident, It took place, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time, this is really interesting. He was roughly maybe in his early 20s. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in his 20s. So this story that I'm about to tell you, right? This is qabla an-nubuwwah. This is before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has received wahy. Okay? And what happens is that there was a man, he came from the tribe of what's called Zubayd. Zubayd was a tribe from Yemen. And why did he come? He came for the purpose of Hajj at that time. You know, they would do, there's the mushrikeen are there, they would come and they would do all kinds of things. But he came for that purpose, and we know that at that time people also did a lot of bartering, buying, selling, trading, things like that. So this man, he came from this tribe of Yemen, and they were viewed, you have the Quraysh there, you have the other, you know, the major tribes around Mecca. They viewed themselves as superior to many of the other tribes. This is in the state of Jahiliyyah we're talking about. So this man, he comes and he starts to barter. He starts to buy and sell things. He has a lot of commodities, merchandise, and he ends up selling a significant portion of them to another man by the name of Wa'il. Now Wa'il, he purchases these products and he says that I will give you the money for these things, right, after the Hajj season ends. And they have an agreement. So he tells him, go finish the Hajj, come back and I'll give you the money. Now, the man from Yemen, he finishes his rites, he does everything he has to, he comes back to Wa'il and he asks for him for the money. And Wa'il says that I don't have it today, come back tomorrow, I'll give it to you tomorrow. So he leaves, he comes back the next day, and the same incident happens. Wa'il says, come back another day, I don't have it, tomorrow I'll give it to you. This happens a few times. You know, somebody who doesn't want to give you, so somebody owes you a loan and they keep making excuses. We probably most have experienced that. Somebody borrows something from you, you give it to them, you think they're going to give it back to you in a week, 2 weeks, and they keep coming up with excuses. This is actually what was going on at that time too. He kept coming up with excuses on why he doesn't have the money, why he can't pay this man. So the man realizes he came all the way from Yemen, he came for this purpose, he's not getting his money, and he has to leave. What is he going to do, right? So he tells the people of Bani Hashim, and he tells the people of Bani Abd-Dar, which are some of the major clans over there, that this man, he cheated me, he took my items, and he promised me he would pay me, and now he's not paying me. What did they do? They did nothing. They did nothing. Why? Because Wa'il was considered one of the leaders of the Quraysh. He's considered like a statesman. He's considered of the higher echelon of the community. He's not somebody you want to mess with, a man of power and prestige. And this guy was a nobody. The guy from Yemen, nobody knew who he was. Zubayr is a poor, meager tribe. So nobody did anything. And why am I telling you this example from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ? There are many, many, many connections between what's happening today and this incident. For example, one is, keep in mind that the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to tell you what happened, he's living in a state of jahiliyyah. Right? And in many cases, we are in that state in our own society and in the world that we live in today. Two is that this man, he was calling to fairness. He was calling for justice. He was calling that he be treated like anybody else should be treated. The problem was the power of the times, who was the Quraysh, the Bani Hashim, the Bani Abd-Dar. They wanted to have nothing to do with it, which is exactly what you see today. The powers that be, those who are in a position of decision-making and authority, they don't want to have anything to do with it. No matter how much you call for justice, no matter how much you call for fairness, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, they don't care. They're going to listen to you. So this was the situation at that time with this man. He came, he complained, nobody did anything. So you know what he did? He did what is very famously known, is that he wants to capture everybody's attention. He wants to call them. He wants to let people know what he's going through and how he's been cheated. So he goes in front of the Kaaba. And this is what they used to do at that time. And he begins to recite, right? Explaining in a form of poetry, Ya Al Fihr. He says in a form of Ya Al Fihr, like he's talking about the descendants of Fihr, who are the Quraysh and the other people. He says, لِمَظْلُومٍ بِضَاعَتُهُ. He starts talking about mazloom, is that there is somebody that has been tremendously wronged. A tremendous crime has been committed against him. In other words, he's talking about himself. He's talking about that his property has been stolen. And he raises his voice, in other words, to capture people's attention. In 2024, brothers and sisters, how do we do that? Because we know that we live in a world where governments, they're not listening. We know that the media doesn't listen. You're only going to get one narrative on CBS, NBC, and Fox. And that's why I tell people, don't even watch that stuff. It's all fake news. What you're going to get is sometimes you may get footage by social media where you actually see the reality of what's going on. And that's what people do today, is that when they want to expose something, when they want to share something that actually happened, they put it on social media. So what I'm saying is, this man at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he's using his form of quote unquote social media. This was social media at the time, right? He went and he openly said it in front of everybody around the Kaaba to get their attention that, hey, there's some tremendous crime that's being committed and nobody knows about it. Nobody's talking about it. I talked to the private leaders about it and no one did anything. So he brings it to the whole community's attention. He wants the world to witness this injustice that happened to him. And you know what happens from that point is that the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at that time, his name was Zubair, he went and he called a meeting. He called a meeting in one of the homes, right, of one of the other noble tribesmen. He says, we're going to meet. And they had a meeting and they discussed that how could it be that we are the powers that be of this place? And one is we let an injustice happen. Two is, don't you think that it will hurt our reputation and our honor that we have these people that are yelling and calling out this injustice that has been committed and we're not doing anything about it? So what did they do is they actually agreed. The leadership of the Quraysh at that time, they said, they made what's called a pact. They made an agreement. They said that from now on, we agree that if there is an injustice that is committed, it doesn't make a difference who did it and who it was done to. We no longer care about the difference in skin color, about the difference of which tribe you're from, on the difference of what all the difference. We don't care. If there was an injustice that was committed, we are going to try to address that injustice and help the one who has been wronged against the wrongdoer. This is who? This is in the state of Jahiliyyah, coming from the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Now, from that incident, right, basically this is what they call Hilf al-Fudul. Hilf al-Fudul. An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and it comes in different narrations. There's some in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, in the Sunan of Darimi and others. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, "Ma yasurruni anna li humrun na'am." He says, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that it would not make me happy. Like in other words, humrun na'am, he's talking about some of the most, basically the camels, these red camels that were considered the most valuable of possessions at that time. He says that I would never, ever even consider having the most prized possessions that the Arabs had and have to give up and sacrifice that treaty or pact that I was a witness to in the state of Jahiliyyah. In other words, when the Prophet ﷺ said that, he said basically that that pact has tremendous value for individuals and societies. When did he say this? I want you to understand this. He's living amongst the mushrikeen. Later on, An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, and it's been the Sahaba, they recorded it, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about his youth when he was in his 20s, and he was talking about living in an environment of kufr, and an environment where the mushrikeen, they were in control. He said, but the reality was that even in that state, right, there were some good things we could accomplish in that society. And one of the greatest things living in a Jahiliyyah society that we accomplished is we still became callers to justice. We began to, who was wronged, we fixed it. Who was the perpetrator, we addressed him. This happened when? This happened, again, in Jahiliyyah. Why am I telling you that, brothers and sisters? Because many times we hear brothers and sisters, we have a very sort of pessimistic attitude. We live in the United States of America and we say that Muslims are only 1%. Muslims are only 1%. What can we do? How can we do? What I'm trying to tell you first and foremost is you should be callers to justice. Each and every one of us, this is part of your iman, brothers and sisters. When you see your own brothers and sisters and children that are literally having their limbs blown off, right? that are being separated from their entire families, orphaned, right? How can you not do anything? Each and every one of us, we must take this as an action item. As Allah is your witness, that as long as Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala gives you life in this world, you will and should be a caller to justice. Like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he said that, in other words, he was encouraging the Sahaba to be those kinds of people. Allah Ta'ala, He mentions in the Holy Quran, a beautiful ayah, I think the time is short, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamin lillahi shuhada bil qist. Allah Ta'ala, and this ayah, actually very similar ayah, comes in Surah An-Nisa and it comes in Surah Ma'idah as well. In this particular ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah Ta'ala says that, O you who believe, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu, and it comes as the form of a command, kunu qawwamina lillah. Be people who stand up and stand for the call of Allah Ta'ala. And He didn't say, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qa'iman. He didn't say be a standard or qa'imin. He said qawwami. In other words, that is something that is part of your inherent nature. That is something that you do consistently. When we use that form, the fa'al, right? What we're saying is that you treat it as if this was your daily practice, right? Your daily practice is to be one who stands for what Allah Ta'ala is calling you towards. Shuhada bil qist, that you are shuhada. Shuhada means you are a witness. Qist is to justice, fairness, removal of oppression, tyranny, the genocide that I talked about. This ayah, brothers and sisters, is a reminder that each and every one of us, we have a role to play. Each and every one of us, we have a role to play. Inshallah ta'ala, in the second part of my khutbah, I'll just share maybe a few thoughts of some practical things we can do. We ask Allah Ta'ala to accept and guide us all. Subhanaka wa la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. My brothers and sisters, today I begin my khutbah with a very sad but extremely important and timely topic, and that is that we are all witnesses. I'm not the only witness to this. We are literally all witnesses to the tremendous tragedy, to the genocide, the mass murder and killing that is occurring in front of our own eyes. I shared with you many strange and unique sort of aspects about this, and one of those is that we're actually getting almost like a day-by-day update. With the advent of social media, it has its pros and its cons. We are not getting a censored version of what is actually happening. I was talking to somebody in DC the other day, and I said, you know, all of these cases now that come about police brutality, I said, do you think they didn't happen 30, 40 years ago? Do you think that police brutality didn't exist 30, 40 years ago, and all of a sudden the police just started doing it, and now we're seeing it on social media? No, the issue was going on before, but just nobody could capture it on their phones. Nobody could see it happening. So we're living in an era now, in 2024, where you're seeing images and you're seeing atrocities. You're seeing the blatant violation of what they call human rights, right? And you're seeing it on video, right? Never has that ever happened in history. By us seeing that, right, that's not just for us to feel sad about. This is a call to action. This is a call that through the legal means in this country, that each and every one of us, we have a responsibility to call to justice. I shared with you the story of that young girl, and I want you to imagine, or I want you to understand that Allah Ta'ala, He is the one who decreed for you to be in this country. He is the one, He didn't put you there, He didn't put you somewhere else. He put you in the United States of America. And each and every one of us needs to ask that question, that why am I here? Why did Allah Ta'ala put me here? And I can guarantee it wasn't just to make money. It wasn't just to buy a house or have a nice car, brothers and sisters, but each and every one of us, we need to see the shortcomings of the society we live in. And we know that the society itself has failed in addressing this issue of injustice. The society itself has failed, not just at a government level, but at a level of even the media, at a level of even people are not talking about it. They're hiding it. They're covering it up. That's why I said to you in the beginning of my khutbah that don't call it out for what it is. It's a genocide. It's not a war. You need to be very clear with the wordings that you use. I shared with you how when that girl, she said that I wished, for death, right? Basically, she said that she had a sense of helplessness and that justice will never be achieved in her life. But this is what we're called to. And I told you the example of the Prophet ﷺ, who himself lived in a society of jahiliyyah. He lived in a time where the mushrikeen were in control of Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ still he witnessed what's called the hilf al-fudul. And I shared with you that when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about that many years later, he spoke about it in a praiseworthy way. And he says that basically, even if I had humrun na'am, even if I was given the best of camels that the Arabs have, I would not trade it in any way for this hilfa fudul that we witnessed and we were a part of. And that is that people came together. It was what? People came together of different backgrounds, right? Of different tribes, right? And they agreed to support the oppressed against the oppressor. That was really the message of the Prophet ﷺ. And then I shared with you the ayah that calls us as believers to be people who are consistently part of that effort. Now, I could spend an entire khutbah talking about ways that we can address this issue. There are many, many ways. First and foremost, we always say this, and you should all continue to do this, is the same way you make dua for yourself, you continue to make dua for your brothers and sisters, right? Of course, if there are through charitable means, you should continue to support those lawful charitable means. If there are ways of in your social circles speaking about the issue, you should speak about it. If it comes to social media, give thumbs up, subscribe, etc. All of those things for those people who are speaking the truth, for those people who are the voices of the voiceless, right? This is happening on social media because many people, the powers that be, they're actually trying to ban even parts of social media. They're trying to modify the algorithms so you still can't even see this stuff on social media. So the least that you can do, if you're not posting content, right, would be you thumbs up, subscribe, getting the message out when you see some of these things happening. Why? So other people are aware of what's going on. So creating awareness, speaking about it, controlling the narrative, talking about the true situation as it is. Again, it's not a 12-year-old girl, right, who has all of these weapons in her car, right, with her 4 little brothers and sisters that deserve to be. No, they're innocent bystanders. Control that narrative. Speak about it like it is, right? And beyond that, I'm going to share one other really important point, and then I'm just going to close my khutbah. So I told you a lot of short-term things you can do, right? The dua, the sadaqah, the charity, controlling the narrative, getting the word out, using social media. These are all things, each and every one of us, action item, day after day after day. We're doing these things. Great. Long-term, though, I want to emphasize something that occurred when people, the campus protests that were happening on the universities, when those campus protests were going on, I was very shocked and surprised that how the policymakers on the college campuses, they did everything in their ability to shut those down. They wanted to stop those as quickly as possible. And they were actually getting direction from even the higher ups. In one particular meeting, there was a group, and a group that is supporting what we're seeing that's happening today. They were telling, in fact, some of the statesmen in America, there was a recording of this, they said that, these kids today, they're on these college campuses protesting. They're standing up, right, and they're protesting, they're creating awareness to what's going on. We don't necessarily fear this right now. This is not that big of an issue. We can change the policies on the campus so they can no longer protest. We can bring out the police, we can do all of this, and then that'll force them to close all of this up. They said the real issue, remember this, the real issue is that what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years in America. In other words, those college kids who are on those campuses today that are speaking their mind, that are protesting, where will they be in 10, 20, 30 years? That's what we fear. In other words, they're saying those same kids that are callers to justice today, that are applying the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawamin. Those same kids will eventually become people on the boards in Montgomery County. They will become on the commissions in Montgomery County. They will take leadership roles in these different institutions in the United States of America. Then how are we going to get rid of them? Then how are we? In other words, they can't get rid of you. Right? This is one of the responsibilities that we have when we're addressing this issue is, brothers and sisters, we have to look at it in a strategic, sustained way, long term. How will we address this issue to, one, stop it today or in the near future, but also so it never happens again? And that is that each and every one of us, right, has a role to play in the society, and for many of us that could eventually be a leadership role. A leadership role where you're not asking somebody else to make the decision, but you yourself and your friends are making the decision. So I encourage each and every one of you, right? Again, your niyyah is in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Always, right? But play a role in the society you live. Work today for tomorrow, and inshallah ta'ala the results will come in the hands of Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala bless us and guide us all. May Allah Ta'ala remove the tyranny and the oppression that we are witnessing today. We ask Allah Ta'ala that He give us the best of this world and the best of the hereafter. We ask Allah Ta'ala when it is our time to leave this world that He take us in the highest state of iman. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. صلى الله على النبي الكريم وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله